you're reading in time of the words.
Hare Krishna. Yes. Hare Krishna. Because really, that is the Hare Krishna. Because sometimes someone might think, oh, Prabhupada started something, then we're involved, we're connected in another, institutionally, they might perceive some sort of separation. But I'm reminded when Guru Maharaj, taking in the other direction, he said, to make a point, and with a little bit of Guru Maharaj's characteristic wit, he said, is Raghunath Das Goswami a member of ISKCON? And he's quoting the verse, Nama Shrestam Manamapi Satri Putra Atras Rupam. And also sometimes we think, there's Rupa, Sanatan, the two Raghunaths, Jiva, Gopal, Bhatta. What if you encounter all of them? We know amongst them, Sanatan's considered their guru in this most superior position, but he will say he's a Rupanuga. That this mutual appreciation, which is really the hallmark of Vaishnavism, right? This mutual appreciation, recognition and appreciation of the devotion of others. So although we had the good fortune to be accepted as disciples of Srila Prabhupada and thought that we knew his glories to a certain degree, they're unlimited, they're infinite, but really hearing from Srila Guru Maharaj, that increased our faith and expanded our vision of His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And then, of course, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj, when he would talk about Prabhupada, sometimes Siddhanti Maharaj would say, when Gurudev starts talking about Prabhupada, that's it. Mm-hmm. Then he captures the audience, because they could see it was not like flattery, but from his heart, heartfelt, deep heartfelt appreciation. So much so that Prabhupada considered him and said openly at the inauguration of the Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Mandir in Mayapur, which is the flagship center for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He invited Guru Maharaj as the guest of honor, and of course Guru Maharaj and Gurudev were inseparable, and Gurudev there, but in that assembly, Prabhupada said, I consider him, as Govinda Maharaj mentioned that when he's on, he said, like a loving, affectionate son. He said, what Govinda Maharaj said is true. I consider him my loving, affectionate son, and his Guru Maharaj, Sridhar Maharaj, as my Shiksha Guru. But I remember Guru Maharaj would tell us, when it came to pranam mantras, that the general system, remember, Guru Maharaj is always telling us what the ideal is, and then we may have to make adjustments from there. He said, what do you say? What's that expression they have? In an ideal world or perfect world, saying that a qualified disciple, and qualified here meaning like knows Sanskrit, but is also, Shraddhanvito Anushranayad Varnayadya, faithful in the line, so qualified siddhantically, but also with the language, that they'll compose the pranam, as Srila Gurudev did for Srila Guru Maharaj. And what we see is extraordinary, talking about this mutual appreciation, is that Srila Guru Maharaj composed the pranam for his disciple, Srila Govinda. I don't know, prior to that, of any recorded instance of such a thing. But it shows that, we discussed last night, Narada and Vyas and the audience listening to Sukadev, saying what sort of fresh, things and new insight and realization will come from the boy, so to speak. Right? There's no ego and Narada thinking, well, I gave you in 10 verses, and well, I expanded that to so many thousands, What does he have to? How can he add any? Not like, just the opposite of that. They're looking for new color. And we're told, Prabhupada would say that's not how the guru will take more pleasure in the advancement of the disciple than his own. And then we say, wait, the guru's in a dynamic position making advancement and progress in Krishna consciousness? Yes. In the spiritual world, there nava rasa, newer and newer experience. They don't take the infinite for granted. It's not a complacent infinite they worship, but by now dynamic, ever expanding, revealing newer, fresher things. So, because Prabhupada at the time really didn't have such qualified disciples, he gave some modification of what in many instances is like the standard Guru Namo Vishnu Padaya, etc. But then Srila Gurudev, from his heart, really, he made that pranam more Prabhupada specific. And that it wasn't enough for him. His heart flowed over into another 3. Right? One was insufficient for what he wanted to express. And I just like to read that here because it's so beautiful and so perfect. So this is the pranam for His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, as composed by His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj. Namaum Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Swami Sri Bhaktivedanta, Prabhupadaya Te Namaha, Gurvagyam Shirshi Dritva, Shaktavesha Swarupine, Hare Krishneti Mantrena, Paschatya Prachyatarine, Vishwacharya Prabharjaya, Dibya Karunya Murtaye, Sri Bhagavata Madhurja, Gita Jnana Pradayine, Gaura Sri Rupa Siddhanta, Saraswati Nishevine, Radha Krishna Padamboja, Bringaya Gurave Namaha. So I offer my humble obeisances under His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is Krishna's beloved associate and who came down to this plane from Goloka Vrindavan. Taking the order of his guru on his head, he is a Shaktavesh avatar, empowered incarnation of Nityananda Prabhu personified. He distributed the Hare Krishna mantra all over the Eastern and Western world, delivering and uplifting all fallen souls. He is the best of millions of Jagat Gurus because he is the personification of divine mercy. He has distributed the sweet nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam and the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita all over the world. He is constantly engaged in exclusive devotional service to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Rupa Goswami, and Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. I offer my obeisances under Srila Prabhupada, who is like a bumblebee always tasting the nectar of the lotus feet of Sri Radha and Govinda. Hare Krishna. How beautiful is that, and perfect, and accurate, and so when you see this type of heartfelt love and affection expressed by Srila Gurudev and reciprocated by Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj there as well. When Prabhupada would visit the Mat, he and Guru Maharaj have these wonderful conversations, and sometimes afterwards they take a little prasadam then Guru Maharaj would offer his bed to Srila Prabhupada. Like, you stay here and I'll make another. And Prabhupada, no, Maharaj. I will go with Govinda Maharaj. And this is not the Govinda Maharaj veranda that we know. Where Govinda Maharaj is, this little room.
Govinda Dham.
This was not, it was like a glorified closet outside on the veranda of Guru Maharaj.
On the top of
this little place, just with like a mat, And that's where Prabhupada took rest. And he said, Srila Govinda Maharaj said, like, he has over 100 temples all over the world, and many of them, they're like palaces. Right? And he's so happy in this humblest of circumstances, like genuinely happy to be there, and that loving, affectionate orb, so to speak. And Prabhupada himself, he would say one of the symptoms of a Vaishnava, he's very jolly. Prabhupada himself was very jolly. We have to remember, he's happy in Krishna consciousness. Right? From his childhood, right? We hear, as a child, and he's organizing the distribution of Krishna consciousness. We've seen with our own eyes, you've seen all the kids, and Lalita, kids in Bengal, they have like a little Rath Yatra, they're pulling through the street, and they would do it around the Pukur and Dum Dum Park, and then take him to the deities. I saw that one little girl, like she's pulling this, and I went, oh, Jai Jagannath, and I started walking away, and the mother goes, no, come, I go, what? And then the girl lifts up like a little ribboned area on the back of the chariot and pulled out gave me some prasadam, because that should be, the Jagannath prasadam should be distributed. But Prabhupada was doing that when he was a child. He had a Rath Yatra cart with Jagannath deities, and he would get the kids together. Right, you'll play mridanga, you're kartals, you're pulling the chariot, you do the puja. He's already organizing Krishna consciousness then. And he said of his father, Gaur Mohan De, that he described him as a pure devotee of Krishna. And I think it's interesting, noteworthy, that he said when he was a baby, different sadhus are coming to the house because they know Gaur Mohan De, he's a very religious man, and so they're coming by as they do. And he said then his father would ask them, this would be his request for, he'd say, please bless my son that he may become a servant of Srimati Radharani. That's what he asked. He didn't say like that he'll be a good devotee of Krishna, which we assume a servant of Radharani is. But it's poignant that Prabhupada himself said, my father would ask him, bless my child that he may become a servant of Srimati Radharani, which gives you a hint of the devotional interior of Gaur Mohan De. And we're told he's training Prabhupada in mridanga as a child, and Prabhupada said his mother would say, like, why are you teaching him mridanga? Like, that's not like the most useful skill, or, and they're saying, no, this is important. Like, and remember, that's how Prabhupada ends up starting the Krishna consciousness movement. Mridanga, kartals. Once we were at the Krishna Balaram temple, and he was giving a lecture. So he is on the Vyasasana, and we're all sitting here in the audience. So there's like, say, a 2-meter distance. And then this Indian family, the gentleman's wife, they come to see the darshan of the deity, and they walk right in front of him, in front of all, and just go straight to the deity. And then they're, bowing and doing all the things that people do, pranam. Right? Then when they're done, they walk right through on the way back. And Prabhupada's giving a lecture. sitting there with a Bhagavatam open, his glasses on, but like they get out of earshot. And Prabhupada turns to him and goes, he said, people are not interested in hearing philosophy. He said, practically speaking, I started this whole movement with kirtan and prasadam. And then he went back to giving his talk explaining the Bhagavatam. Perhaps that verse, Amayo yascha bhutanam jayate yena suvrata tadeva hyamayam na punati chikirsitam dravyam. That's it. Saying, Narada telling Vyasa, does not a thing which caused a disease when therapeutically applied become the cure for the same thing? By saying, Vyasa, you gave this previously, but it ended up, we see the people are in a diseased condition, now you'll give it again in a new way, in a fresh way, and it will cure them. You'll give them pure Krishna conception. So Srila Prabhupada, from that childhood onward, he's a jolly devotee himself, but as Das Goswami says in his praise of Srila Sanatana Goswami Prabhu, Vairagya Yug Bhakti Rasa Prayatnai Apayam Mam Anubimsam Andam Kripam Buddhi Yat Paraduka Duki Sanatanastvam Prabhum Asrayami. Saying, oh, Sanatana Goswami, you made me, I was reluctant, you made me drink this Vairagya Yuga, the rasa of Rupa Goswami's Yukta Vairagya. And now I'm happy for it. And saying, and you, Sanatana Goswami, you're Bishwam Purna Sukhayate. In the words of Prabhupada, you see the flood of Gaur Prem, Krishna Prem in this world. You're drowning in an ocean of Gopi Bhav. So what do you experience any happiness? Unhappiness? Yes. When you see others, for want of Krishna consciousness, suffering, that is your only unhappiness. Otherwise, you're a jolly, happy devotee, but seeing others suffering for want of Krishna connection, that brings some unhappiness to your heart. And sometimes Swami Maharaj Prabhupada would say that, the dates are easy to remember. Because met Saraswati Thakur 22. Right? When he says, I was a young man in Khadi, you think, why is it important to say what he was wearing? Because Khadi was the dress of the Gandhi movement. That's why he says that. I was a young man. Like, this was our uniform to show we want independence, etc. And he said, and when he met, there was a god brother, he said, who insisted that he go on a rooftop in Calcutta and hear from Srila Saraswati Thakur, and that he argued in favor of independence, saying, we're subjugated independent people, who will take us seriously until we achieve independence? He said, but I was defeated by my Guru Maharaj. Then he said, it was a natural defeat. And he said, and when his friend said, so what was your impression? He said, I think that Mahaprabhu's movement is in the capable hands of that person who's perfect and pure and capable of spreading it all over the world. But that was 22, involved in family life and business, unable to come forward at that time. In 33, he gets initiated, and who was known, his initiated name, Abhay Charanaravinda. Right? And he and Guru Maharaj, they meet around that time on the Braja Mandal Parikrama, as Saraswati Thakur is doing every year. Guru Maharaj and Swami Maharaj, when they're together at the opening of Mayapur Chandra, discuss that. And they're told one day, like they say, the sannyasis are going to conduct a parikrama to see Sheshai Vishnu. He said, otherwise Prabhupada, a little bit later, he'll be giving, taking the class, giving a talk here. And Guru Maharaj and Prabhupada turned to each other, and Prabhupada said, I'm saying, what I will see with Sheshai. And Guru Maharaj goes, I exercise. And they both start laughing. Because that was an expression of Saraswati Thakur, saying, Guru Maharaj is saying, we go present ourselves to the deity to be seen by the deity. We have very little capacity to see the deity, but the deity can see us, and that will be beneficial for us. So when people would say they came from some darshan or something, and Saraswati Thakur, you saw, Jagannath, or you saw Gaur Gadadhar. Yes, Prabhupada. Really? And they'd go, no, Prabhupada, we did not. And he said, yes, your eye exercise. Because we're told you should start with the lotus feet and then go up and this way and that way and go. So, and you see, that means your eyeball is going like this and then like that and then up and over. And it shows Saraswati Thakur's humor. We forget sometimes because he's the personification of gravitas, that what a sense of humor he has. So he said, eye exercise. So Guru Maharaj, he says, Prabhupada, I'm saying, what will I say? I'm staying to hear Prabhupada talk. And Guru Maharaj, yes, eye exercise. And it was at that time, Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada, he noted about Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he said, oh, he does not go away. He's serious about hearing. Like he made a note of that. And we're told that various times when the God brothers would see how serious he was, that naturally they want to get him more involved in their temple, like anyone would, right? But Saraswati Thakur, for some mysterious reason, is saying, no, you just let him go on. And I have some plans like for him later, just let him be. Right? Don't try to get him involved in what you're doing. Even if it be Sri Gaudiya Mat, the worshipable Sri Gaudiya Mat. And sometimes I find this to actually be hopeful. Prabhupada would say about meeting Saraswati Thakur, he said, I met my Guru Maharaj maybe 10 times in his life. Right? And some of those times may have been at a lecture or a talk. But he told him, he would say to the group, you're all intelligent young men. They were educated, they went to English medium schools, educated in the British system, so they were familiar. Then he'd say, why don't you preach Krishna consciousness in the English language? And when he reminded Guru Maharaj of that once, Guru Maharaj said, I'm trying to remember because Prabhupada was saying that all the time. Right? But he took it to heart that was like personally meaningful for him. Because we hear things in a group setting or we're reading the book or whatever, but it's also an extremely personalized experience, personalized infinite. The absolute descending in relative circumstance to meet and greet and embrace and inspire the heart. So, and before leaving the world, Saraswati Thakur wrote him, again reiterating this message, this order, with Gurudev right there, Gurvagyam Shirashi Darjam, that taking this order on his head, Saraswati Thakur, preach Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking countries. So, 44, he starts the Back to Godhead magazine in English, right? Not Bengali, Hindi, in English. The very name, Back to Godhead. And really it's the what do you call it? The motto or the legend at the top is a verse from Charitamritam. Krishna Surya Samahoy, what is it? Maya Andhakar, I forget exactly, but Surya, about the Krishna concept is like the sun. Maya's illusion or the darkness and will be destroyed by the illuminating Krishna sun. Maya Andhakar, yeah. Krishna Surya sun, because we're told Bhagavatam, same thing. But anyway, so he starts this Back to Godhead magazine. So think, this is around 44. 47, Govinda Maharaj joins Srila Guru Maharaj, and Guru Maharaj is telling him to help Swami Maharaj in Calcutta. So Gurudev's one of the first distributors of the Back to Godhead magazine. He's got a book bag. He's out in Calcutta distributing this magazine to people, coming back, hearing Gita from Swami Maharaj, telling him also the opposition he encounters when he's trying to distribute the magazines. What should I say if they say this? That, because one was about the Mahakali devotees. And so he said, Swami Maharaj said, then tell them, look, see all those heads chopped off on the, surrounding her? You want to become like that? And that's where they're sharing breakfast, the famous story where we know Srila Prabhupada was like very aristocratic in his movements and qualities, characteristics, behavior. Like his breakfast is like some nice, say, aloo dum and some puris, some fried potatoes and some hot puris. And Govinda Maharaj, he's like muri, puffed rice. And he said, Swami Maharaj would say, Gorindu, his brahmachari name, have some puris and some sabji. And Govinda Maharaj said, no, muri is sufficient for me. And Swami Maharaj said, that is simply cheating the stomach. Take some puris and some sabji. So this kind of sweet, loving, affectionate exchange is going on. And Prabhupada's sister, Pishima, was also a disciple of Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur. She realizes that his family life is a burden, and also his business is failing. And she's realized all along for years that he's meant for one thing, practicing, preaching, promoting Krishna consciousness. So she's saying, Prabhu, we'll take care of the family. You're free to go. And he goes to Vrindavan, and these are approximately 40, now 1955, as a Vanaprastha. And he takes residence at the Radha Damodar temple, where we know the Bhajan Kutir and Samadhi of Srila Rupa Goswami and the Samadhi of Srila Jiva Goswami, his deities Radha Damodar, also Samadhi of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and many other great devotees were cared for there by Srila Jiva Goswami and the others. And so Prabhupada got this room there where from his room, actually, if you open the doors, you could have darshan of Radha Damodar. Right? And what is he doing there? He's going on with his spiritual practices, but he's like Guru Maharaj, and one of the most famous pranams, the Srila Saraswati Thakur, the line is there, Vilasatu Hridi Nityam Bhakti Siddhanta Vani. Saying, the Vani, the order, the words of Srila Saraswati Thakur, saying, may they play upon your heart eternally. Right? They're playing upon Prabhupada's heart. Take this Krishna consciousness to the English-speaking countries. Right? And he himself said that he is reading the Bhagavad Gita, which he's translating. So in that room, he's translating Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamritam, what later will become the Nectar of Devotion, originally titled Science of Devotion. He's translating that, and other works. Right? And he says that in reading Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary on the Gita Sloka, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Ekeha Kurunandana, the type of resolute determination that is required to be successful, progressive Krishna consciousness. He said that he had an epiphany, and that he realized his sole reason for existence was to fill the order of his Guru Maharaj. That's the meaning of Gurvagyam Shirashi Darjam. taking that order upon his head, making that his life and soul, his raison d'etre, his reason for being, to fulfill the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which is in pursuant of the divine vision of Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur, who revealed Mahaprabhu's birthplace and predicted one day the world would come together and Krishna Kirtan, and the prediction of Mahaprabhu himself, Pritibite Ache, Jata Nagaradigram Sarvatra Prachar Hoibe Nam Mornam, that Krishna consciousness would be spread to every town and village in the world. So he's in Radha Damodar, and we've seen the original manuscripts, and this paper, like Prabhupada had, he once wrote he'd write letters to Guru Maharaj, little postcards, things like that, and he said, in one of his poems too, he said, now that I am penniless, the only thing that remains of my former family life is a long list of names. Like once he had no money, nobody wanted to have anything to do with him anymore. Right? And he used to also mock others that sometimes he'd say, he said, they give all their money to their family members, he said, and then they come to Vrindavan with their beads. And he said, but Krishna, he is very intelligent. He wants to know, what did you do with your money? Like you gave your money to everyone else, and then you've come to me with your beads. But Prabhupada was in the inverse. He had nothing left, and he's there. And the reason I mention this is because, I know the postcard he wrote to Guru Maharaj, he said, I am totally disgusted with human civilization. He said, the animals appear to be more friendly to me. So some intensity of the life experience. And so having very little money, he couldn't afford to buy paper to type his translations onto. So we know in India, until recently, they'd never thrown anything away, in the history. So they have paper that would, had business contracts on it or legal contracts, And so that was cheaper. So that's what he would buy, turn it around, load it into the typewriter, and that's what he would type on. Because when I found these things in the archives, myself had the privilege to look through them, I'd turn over the other side, and then it would be like some legal document, and I was at first very confused, because I thought, that doesn't sound like Prabhupada. Then in time I came to discover that's what his situation was like. He couldn't buy virgin paper to type his books on. Right? Still, he's proceeding on. And maybe if you saw him in his daily marketing, going to that little Loy Bazaar market, buying a cauliflower, some potatoes or something, he liked to quote this verse as Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigyeha Nabujoy. Be very careful about how you view the Vaishnavas. You cannot understand what their internal position is. So if someone had seen him at that time, before this worldwide success, inundating the world with Krishna consciousness, what might they have thought about him in terms of what his contribution is, or how valid or vital his spiritual life is? They don't understand it. He said, someone who's better than millions of Jagat Gurus is inside there typing the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavat Purana. Right? So Prabhupada arranging the printing of those books, and also we should not think like he started preaching in 1965. As we don't, he's preaching since he was a child. He's preaching throughout. He's always preaching. When Janmashtami comes, he's sending out invitations to members of the business community or those showing devotional tendencies, inviting them to come to the Radha Damodar temple for a program, and small programs. So he's doing that also, because sometimes we think only of the great success with the thousands of followers, disciples, devotees, or the big festivals. He also had programs with a handful. But the voice and the order of Srila Saraswati Thakur playing upon his heart to take Krishna consciousness to English-speaking countries, particularly America. So sometimes Saraswati Thakur would say, and talk about Markina Lok, America, and give some lament like, oh, we didn't take it to America. Like that was something that was one of the desires in his heart. And Srila Guru Maharaj said of Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he said, our Guru Maharaj had planned to preach in the West for the next 10 years. Really, the men he sent were an advance party. And the book Sri Krishna Chaitanya was produced as the document on which the preaching would be based. Right? And he said, but then Saraswati Thakur, he left the world at the age of 63, prematurely. He said, but through Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he gave our Guru Maharaj those 10 years. But so he's hearing this internally, and he gets the inspiration to, when he would talk about sannyas, sometimes he said that his Guru Maharaj would appear to him in a dream and say, come out, like out of family life. And once Prabhupada said about it, he said, and I would think, oh, how horrible. Devotee Swami was saying, how horrible. But Prabhupada just saying like that at that time, and it's part of his pastimes, and he's saying, oh, how will I go on? And he said, but Guru Maharaj keeps appearing, come out, pulling him in this particular direction. So he gets the inspiration, does take sannyas, and I saw on his passport, which was also there in the archive, in his passport picture, it's like huge tilak, just Uttariya and Bahirvas, no kurta, big tilak markings everywhere like this. And then it says, where it says father's name, it says Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur. So, and he has no money to go to America. Right? So he approaches this Sumati Morarji, who owns the Scindia steamship line, because although it's basically a freighter, they do have half a dozen rooms. And it's, as Gurudev say, a nothing matter for her to give him passage on the ship. But what she's really afraid of is, due to his advanced age, that he won't survive the journey, and then she'll have the death of a sadhu on her hand. That's why it's not that she's cheap or she doesn't get it, or this is what she's afraid of. And she's thinking like, maybe he's a little puggled too, this advanced age sadhu, he wants to go on a 30-month sea voyage to take Krishna consciousness to America, But Prabhupada is so insistent. I think at a particular point, Krishna just in her heart said yes, made her say yes. Somehow she finally agreed. Right? And what was Prabhupada, like his armory, were trunks full of these Bhagavatams he printed, kartals, some mridangas. Right? That was his luggage, right? And also his little special cooking pot. And then he kept a diary on this ship, right? And Prabhupada was a meticulous record keeper. Like if he went to the market and bought he had a record of that. Bought one cauliflower, it was 0.30 paisa, whatever, postage. He always kept records like this. And in this diary, he's talking about, it leaves Calcutta, but then it goes to the southern tip of India. And then from there, there's like a stop, and then from there, the major ocean journey. And I was looking through this and saying, because they would give it to the passengers, like, you can keep a little diary of your journey. And it's all like that, just very, perfunctory. And then as the ship goes out and it's only water everywhere, not a drop to drink, that zone, then Prabhupada's heart starts coming out. And he's saying, today I'm feeling deep separation from my worshipable lords. Radha Damodar, Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Gopinath. He starts naming the principal deities of Vrindavan and saying he's feeling deep separation from them. This is very candid. In other words, no one will read this. He has no expectation that anyone will ever see this or read this. So it's a diary. Right? He's candidly expressing his heart. Right? And he said, and now, so far from Vrindavan, I am exclusively dependent upon their mercy. So we can understand, this is it. He's going to make the ultimate sacrifice. Right? Krishna consciousness is Atmani Vedam. Sometimes when we hear that Sharanagati expressed different ways, it's interesting that when Doinya Atmani Vedam, that sequence, we were feeling so hopeless, so helpless, so in need of Krishna's grace and mercy that Doinya leads to Atmani Vedam, to self-sacrifice and self-offering, right? Which is really to become a servant of Srimati Radharani. And Krishna, who, as we talk, in different ways, superficially, we think like, how cruel is Krishna? Or how insensitive? Or why does he do this to his devotees? Hasn't Prabhupada demonstrated his fidelity, the magnitude of his earnestness? Right? But we're told Vishwanath saves us from being operatic towards Krishna by saying Krishna is addicted to this particular type of Krishna prem that is exclusive to the deepest part of the heart's core. And it comes out when, what is the word I'm looking for? When there's the maximum amount of pressure upon love and affection. So, because you would think it's enough what Prabhupada is doing. And then what happens? In the middle of the ocean, he didn't think like that. The middle of nowhere, devotee of Krishna. He has a heart attack, at least one, maybe two. And I think, Krishna, how can you do this? Right? It's as if to say, if there was anything left, right? He's now just offered himself, placed himself on the altar of ultimate self-sacrifice in the middle of the ocean, on his, trying to fulfill the order. Why is he there? To fulfill the order of Srila Saraswati Thakur. Right? And so to the maximum, and when you're reading the diary and you get to this point, and then there's like nothing, and like a gash over these 2 or 3 days pages, and then he says like, I remember he says like, today I cooked bati chachari. Because that, when I asked Gurudev, sir, the bati chachari, oh, that is Bengali comfort food when you don't have a lot of you cook in the bati, cube the potatoes and with mustard oil. It's Bengali comfort food. Today I made bati chachari and I'm feeling some strength. But then he says, reveals the real source of his strength. He said, daily I am relishing the nectarine of Sri Chaitanya Lila, the source of my all vitality. Right? That's what he said. The source of all my vitality is from daily relishing the nectarine of Chaitanya Lila. Those are his words. And then he arrives on the shore. Oh, before that, I should say that they verified, and the captain's log, who's been like captain, sailing these seas for decades, suddenly Prabhupada has a dream, and Krishna says, "Don't worry, Abai." Remember, Abai means the one who's fearless. And saying, "Don't worry, Abai. The ship, everything is now under my control." And the captain writes in his log, he's saying, suddenly the ocean has become like a pond. I've never seen this. There are no waves. The boat's just going very smoothly. It's a miracle by any standard. Right? And Guru Maharaj, as we told, Gurudev, Guru Maharaj, they're increasing our appreciation of who Srila Prabhupada is. The way Guru Maharaj described it, he said, when Swami Maharaj put himself on the altar of self-sacrifice with no other interest, no other consideration than the order of his Gurudev, sacrificing his whole being for the order of Srila Saraswati Thakur, he said, then divine power had to come down and work on his behalf. Right? And that's why Gurudev, the Shaktavesh of Nityananda. Right? So he said, Shaktavesh avatar means when there's divine empowerment in a particular devotee. Because we should note that, like, sometimes we would think like, oh, then if we could be, sincere and enter a similar circumstance, then what kind of an outcome there be? That's not impossible. But I'll put it this way, it doesn't mean that that anyone who doesn't have this outcome is insincere, or that anyone who is sincere will always get this type of outcome. It's extraordinary. That is the point. We heard yesterday about Swayam Samutirja Suduskaram, the Mahajans, they're crossing over the ocean of nescience. It's in the prayers of the demigods. And when Krishna's in the womb of Devaki. And saying, and they leave, the path that they took, it remains behind, so that others, you can follow that path, you can go this way. So Prabhupada, by his example, he's pulling us in the direction of self-surrender. But we should never forget, what he did and the outcome is extraordinary. It's divine. Goswami said divine power came down to work on his behalf. So, and he arrives in New York, and then you think, if that would be enough, then a year of very little success, struggling to put those Bhagavatams he brought in bookstores, have a few programs here and there, but always going on with his spiritual practices. He's reading Chaitanya Charitamritam, Bhagavatam, other things, chanting the holy name of Krishna. He does all these things. He once said, he said, I was prepared to do this if no one came. Because someone was asking Prabhupada, how many devotees is required to make a temple? Because someone's saying, well, you have like the temple president, then you have like the treasurer, the cook, the temple commander, the Sankirtan leader, or Pujari. And Prabhupada said, one. He said, like me. He said, I'm doing everything. Cooking, cleaning, puja, this. said, if you have one sincere person, that's enough. So he's doing all those things, but not getting a substantial response, and then going down to the Scindia steamship line and checking that chalkboard when they say, when the next boat is returning to India. And really, he's preparing to go back. Delaying, but preparing. And then a devotee comes, Hayagriva Prabhu, who will be Dr. Howard Wheeler, his later his editor and disciple, and he said, seeing Prabhupada with his sannyas vesh and his Vrindavan shoes, those little plastic white shoes from Vrindavan, he's saying, are you from India? And Prabhupada would say, as Gurudev says here, I descended from Goloka Vrindavan, right, to bring you in connection with that divine domain. I'm saying this poetically, right, on the basis of what Gurudev said here. Right. That's where he's from. Right. We heard, maybe Siddhanta Maharaj said Gurudev was in Hungary once on this day and told after the birth of Krishna, so many gifts the people are bringing, and Nanda Maharaj and Krishna, who will distribute all this wealth? And then Prabhupada in his divine form and Gokula Vrindavan comes forward and volunteers to distribute that wealth. That's also hinted at in these verses. So there, and the rest, as they say, is history. All these boys and girls come and join him, and he empowers them. And sometimes I would also think, like, how did this work? Because if you will hear the devotees speak from that time, let's just say their representation is less than stellar, right, in terms of authenticity and spiritual substance, whatever. But then the verse comes to mind, Ananyas Chintayantamam Yejana Paryupasate Yoga Kshemam Bahamyaham. How Krishna compensates. If there's any deficiency on the side of the, Krishna compensates for that. So because Prabhupada was there, the pure devotee, and it was really his kirtan, though the devotees offering themselves to be agents of his distribution, somehow Krishna compensated for whatever degree, whatever might have been lacking in the representation, still there was a direct, pure experience. Okay? And this way the movement spread and grew. He published so many books. It was miraculous that the Chaitanya Charitamritam with Rameshwar Maharaj and the devotees, they did 17, say, 400-page books in 17 months. One book per month. This is, factually true. And when the first book, which he had done in India, so it was published last, was Adi 1. Because he had already been working on that, and everything else was done on the dictaphone. Prabhupada, after everybody goes to sleep, he stays up all night dictating these books. And sometimes taking a little nap or something. But I remember when I was waiting for Adi Leela Volume 1 to finally read that. And I'd read it, and Prabhupada happened to be in Atlanta at the time. We were on this book distribution party called the Library Party, and we got to go on a walk with Prabhupada that morning. And I'd just shown it very eagerly to one of these professors, and I was telling Prabhupada what the professor said, which was, he said, I am astonished at his output, how he can produce all of these books. Besides the spiritual substance, that then just what he's doing is astonishing. And so I told that to Prabhupada on the walk, and Prabhupada immediately deflecting the praise to his servitors. He said, oh no, there's Jayadvaita Maharaj and Pradumna. And he started naming different devotees, and I thought, I need to push this a little more. And I said, Prabhupada, they understand that you have like a team. still they are astonished at what you're able to publish. And then he stopped. He went, and he said, they are astonished. I am astonished. So like what was going through him, that divine current that almost dictated the requirement that his body be covered in chandan every day to just kind of like cool it down. So arriving there, and interestingly, before he got off the boat, I jumped forward, now I'm going back a little bit, it actually arrived in Boston, and then you had to wait a day or so, and then go to New York to disembark. So he wrote these 2 poems there. And the one poem called Markine Bhagavata Dharma, preaching Bhagavat Dharma in America. Some of his favorite verses are there. Tada rajastamo bhava kamaloba dayasti. And he's saying the population here is overwhelmed by passion and ignorance. He's saying it will be very, how will they give attention to the message of Godhead? He's saying, but Krishna, you've brought me here. And if you brought me here, it must be for some reason. He said, so if you've brought me here to dance, then make me dance, etc. And sign, you're the insignificant beggar, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada. And boy, did Prabhupada dance, and get everyone else to dance. And then the Rath Yatra, and that after millions of books distributed all over the world, hundreds of temples open, and what was for him a crowning glory, that city, New York City, where he came as a penniless, bhikkhu, divine beggar, and that in 1976, summer of 70, Rath Yatra of 76, that was the crowning glory of Srila Prabhupada. It was triumphantly on Fifth Avenue. And to market that event, Prabhupada's also a master at marketing. So the press was called, and remember, it's America and American journalists, and he said, they're all sitting there with their pens, and Prabhupada's giving them like the lead and the headline, the talking point. He said, America is the most important country in the world. And they're all like, yeah, America's the most important. And he said, New York City is the most important city in America. Yeah, New York City. And they're all New Yorkers. Yeah, And then he said, and in New York City, Fifth Avenue is the most important street. And yeah, Fifth Avenue. And then everyone said, on that street, we are having our Rath Yatra festival. So he's showing them, this is how you should present us in your media. In the most important country and its most important city, on the most important street will be this Krishna Consciousness Festival. And there he was, right, on Subhadra's chariot. And from Prabhupada's point of view, this was all about glorifying Krishna, distributing the holy name of Krishna, the Bhagavatam, the books in praise of Krishna. But what is Krishna's position? We learned really Krishna consciousness about Krishna always shining the spotlight on the devotees and telling us the real devotees are those who are devotees of my devotees. Right? No one can question the devotion of Prabhupada's devotees. But here, in time, I began to see it as Krishna's gift to Prabhupada in the name of a festival glorifying Krishna. Prabhupada who came as a beggar and walked the streets of the Lower East Side of New York. He's riding on a chariot Think about that. He's riding on a chariot, this gigantic throne, so to speak, on the most important street and the most important city and the most important country in the world. It's like Krishna's tribute to him to show how great he is. And to this day, anyone who has any substantial connection with Krishna consciousness owes a debt to him. It doesn't matter what mission you're in technically, because we could make the case too. If you're not for Prabhupada, then we don't discover Guru Maharaj, Gurudev, et al. So wherever you are, even the bogus people owe a debt to Prabhupada. Everybody. Right? It all comes from him. And if you asked him, he would say, I'm just a humble, insignificant servant of my Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur. And what do we know? If you ask Saraswati Thakur, say, Bhaktivedanta Thakur says he's a sweeper in the Nam Hut of Nityananda. I am a straw in his broom. And on and on and on. This is the line of pure devotion. Yes, Guru Maharaj, he would say, what Swami Maharaj has done, we are proud, we are happy, we are thankful. He said, what he has done is like an ocean, and we're like a pond. A pond has some value, but what he's done is like an ocean. And this type of glorification. So, second poem, Prayer to the Lotus Feet of Krishna. And there, again, this Prabhupada, we think like, as if he knew these things were going to be published, and he did not at this point, we could say. Right? So he's writing something that's very confidential, that's no one is likely to ever see. Right? It's like, that's how pure it is. It's for his own edification. He's expressing his heart. So on the one, we get the preaching poem, Markine Bhagavata Dharma, and that is more standard in a sense, although beautiful, especially the ending. But this other poem is actually very confidential, and he's revealing his heart. And then he says in there that he was like crying in separation from Krishna. Because he could also be thinking like, what have I gotten myself into? The boat journey, and now here, and he's really feeling deep separation from Krishna. And he's almost apologizing for it and telling Krishna, so today I cried out to you, my heart, and I was just thinking, like, when will you and I be taking lunch together on the banks of the Jamuna and running and frolicking in the forest of Vrindavan? This is not ordinary, right? This is exceptional. He's revealing something about his ecstatic emotional interior. Saying, when you and I will be running and frolicking in the forest in Vrindavan and eating lunch together on the banks of the Jamuna. Right? So these things, and then telling, remember his father said, that he will be a servant of Radharani. And he's saying here, Guru Maharaj, because I started sharing what I was getting from there with Guru Maharaj, and of course Guru Maharaj extracted more and sort of put many pieces together thematically to understand. Things I'd collected, Guru Maharaj gave them all a structure and shared his own superior understanding. But so in this poem, Prabhupada so irresistibly, charmingly approaching Krishna, and now comes Guru Maharaj, because he's telling Krishna that my Guru has given me an order, and I feel myself unqualified and unfit and helpless to fulfill that order. But if you will help me. Then I can be successful. So Guru Maharaj is saying, taking it that the Guru is Radharani's delegation. Saraswati Thakur is Radharani's delegation. So I think the order is coming from Radharani, right? Because she wants everyone to take the name of Krishna and relish Krishna consciousness. In one sense, Krishna consciousness is her gift to the world. And Mahaprabhu would not disagree with me. Right? So, Guru Maharaj said, what he's saying is to Krishna that Radharani wants this service from me, but I feel that I am unqualified and unfit to do that. But you're the most fit and the most qualified. You're Krishna. If you will help me fulfill this order that's coming from Radharani, then, my dear brother, she will be pleased with you and you will get her association. So how can Krishna resist? And then divine power came down to work on his behalf. So, and when I submitted a little list of other things noted along the way, Guru Maharaj said, like, why Nityananda? Why the specific Shaktivesh of Nityananda Prabhu? And like, well, Prabhupada, we know Gaur Mohan Day, this Day family, the Maliks, Prabhupada speaks about his own family history. And then we find out that they're like Suvarnavanik gold merchants. And this particular family line was very dear to Nityananda Prabhu. So he's always giving special, he loves them, they love him. Right? So that was another thing on it. Then the diary, the ship's diary, that on the list, Prabhupada's poem, some other things from different parts of the Bhagavatam, some personal observations about the Chandan we would see. Because you see so many pictures of him, like, not just with a little tap on the foot, like covered in Chandan. Right? And the way he accepted sannyas and thereby liberated the world. So some years passing by and meditating on what Srila Guru Maharaj revealed and assembling these various things, I was recalling the great sloka from the Vishnu Sahasranam, Mahabharata. It says, Suvarna Varna He Mango Barandas Chandanagadi Sanyasakrich Chamat Shanto Nishta Shanti Parayana. And it's the charge is extracting the appearance of Mahaprabhu as being indicated here. Right? Suvarna Varna He Mango Gauranga, etc. And how he accepts sannyas and liberates the world. But then it occurred to me that this verse was equally applicable to Srila Prabhupada. The Suvarna Varna, that he descends in this line, who's very favorite to Nityananda Prabhu. Barangas Chandanagadi, his divine form always covered and chandan. Sannyasa Krich Tamat Shanto. And then he takes the sannyas order of life and delivers the world. And back in that diary, so it's the Scindia steamship line. Right? And it cannot be a coincidence other than a divine coincidence. The name of the ship is the Jaladuta. We've heard of Megadut, the cloud messenger, Hansadut, the swan messenger, but here, Jaladut, the ocean messenger. Right? And it says on the running heads of the little diary, we carry India's message of peace and goodwill. It's like Nishta Shanti Parayana. Right? They're saying this is what is the founding purpose of this steamship? That we will carry India's message of peace and goodwill to the world. And then aboard the Jaladuta, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. You know, if you take peace and goodwill to its ultimate expression, you know, Gaur consciousness, Krishna consciousness, it was realized. And I saw each one of these lines is equally applicable to Srila Prabhupada. So how extraordinary is that? How great is His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and this His Divine Appearance Day. And like the day after Krishna's, you just start writing, just make a list of all the coincidences, and that you'll realize in time they're not coincidences at all. That what you're witnessing or participating in is divine pastimes, Krishna Lila, as expressed from the heart of His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So, Madhusudan Maharaj, if you can add to the...
If I can, yes.
No, I mean addendum, some
Maharaj,
appreciation
Maharaj,
for Prabhupada.
all appreciation where, Maharaj, I think anybody who knows me or has heard me, they may say, oh, I'm a broken record, because I'm always stressing the three guardians of our age, the three Paramahamsas, actual pure devotees of Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Gurudev, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and Srila Govinda Maharaj. So, Maharaj, we're always stressing that because we feel it. And I'm from the generation after Srila Prabhupada, the disciples who had that opportunity to be with Srila Prabhupada. And I came, and for some months I thought that Srila Prabhupada was on the planet. And then when he wasn't on the planet, it was like, oh yes, my misfortune, my bad karma my badness, my bad karma didn't allow me to come to such a pure devotee. But from the very beginning of the Krishna consciousness is come from Srila Prabhupada. And how you were saying that Srila Prabhupada, he's giving an instruction and empowering others to do these things. They are his instruments to do these things. We also felt as the next generation, what we're being asked to do, we're asked to do so many things. And we do them like without hesitation and not thinking, oh, I can do it. In fact, I definitely think I cannot do. But then everything is coming from that current of this, coming from above to down. And always stressing how we must not only not ignore, but must give that like a prime position to Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj and Gurudev. And this is in my addendum, if you like, just to make that, play my same recording again, because it's so much necessary. And this is what is the safe position, the only really safe position of Krishna consciousness in the modern age. At one point you mentioned about how Srila Prabhupada's business was going down.
Yes.
And I was with the Gurudev. Gurudev said, and why was his business going down?
Yeah.
Because instead of trying to do business with his customers, he's preaching to them, spending all day talking about Krishna consciousness instead of about trying to get the business deal sealed and get them out.
Yeah.
So that was just something you brought up there. But all of these coincidences and the whole result that we see, that is so wonderful, Maharaj. That's, that's
and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in that meeting at the inauguration of Chaitanya Chandravaya Mandir in Sridham Mayapur, and Prabhupada invited Srila Sridhar Maharaj as the guest of honor, and Srila Gurudev, inseparable, he's bringing Guru Maharaj there. And Gurudev thought, Guru Maharaj will speak, and I'm just serving Guru Maharaj, as I always do. He didn't expect to be sing, speak, or... And Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj there also. And we've heard that when Guru Maharaj arrives, and our Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardhan Maharaj is there as well, in the group. I want to be in that number. And they asked Prabhupada, like, so what should we do for the installation of the deity? And it's Radha, Madhava, and Mahaprabhu. That I like to note also. Radha, Madhava, and Mahaprabhu. That was Prabhupada's conception of who should be in the center. It's the Chaitanya Chandradoya Mandir. So Mahaprabhu has to be in central position, like his Gurudev, Saraswati Thakur, Guru Gauranga, and Radha Govinda, or Radha Madhava. But they say to Prabhupada, so what do we do for the installation? He said, Sridhar Maharaj has arrived, the deities are installed. That's right. But anyway, that famous picture, they're sharing the Vyasasan together, and Guru Maharaj's health not so good at that time. But he speaks something, and I'll just say, just to throw it out there, like a non sequitur, because when I listen to Guru Maharaj, I mean, like, usually Guru Maharaj is very careful about, like, in a public setting, what sort of Harikatha he will give. But it's like he's so excited by this moment. It is the major thing, that city that Bhaktivedanta Thakur envisioned and everything. And he says other things, but I just throw this one thing out there that should, like, my jaw dropped. And he's talking about taking Krishna Nam, and he said, and if you take the holy name of Krishna, he said, one day you will find you have entered the Lord's harem. You know, I'm like play it, what? You have become a member of his harem. So Guru Maharaj is very excited, and he's saying all these wonderful things, but then he stops and defers to Govinda Maharaj. And Govinda Maharaj is a little surprised. I think what to say, and Babaji Maharaj on the side. And then what he says is like so perfect for the moment, for the divine personality to be glorified, you know. And it's from the heart of Srila Gurudev. And when he said, he quotes this verse of Raghupati Upadhyay, Kamprati Katai Tamise Koba Samprati Pritim Ayatu Gopa Tanaya Kunje Gopa Viduti Vitang Brahma. Kamprati Katai Tamise Samprati Koba Pratitim Ayatu Gopati Tanaya Kunje Gopa Viduti Vitang Brahma. When this verse, when Babaji Maharaj heard this, he leapt up and he went, Hare Krishna! like, it was so perfect. And Babaji Maharaj said, then he captured the crowd. And like Siddhanta Maharaj says, when Gurudev starts glorifying Prabhupada, you know. And what he said, in the verse, Mahaprabhu is asking Raghupati Upadhyay, you know, after he said, what's the best thing in the world? And Raghupati Upadhyay said, you know, or what have you understood from the scriptures? And he said, well, you know, there's the Mahabharata, the Shrutis, this, that, and the other thing, and they're all giving you a path out of this world of mortality and fearfulness. He said, but, you know, and a connection with the Parabrahman. But he said, but the Parabrahman is crawling in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. I want to know, what did he do? So like in one leap from the Shrutis, the Smriti, Mahabharata, all these things, one leap into Vatsalya Rasa. Like even bypassing, you could say, Dasya and Sakya along the way. Like just boom, right there. But one step short, out of respect. And that's when he's fully captured Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu is saying, like, is there anything more that could possibly be said? And that's when he quotes this verse, saying, who can I tell, and who would believe me? And he alludes to Madhura Rasa pastimes of Krishna with the Braja Gopis. But here, Gurudev is taking that sloka and saying, who can I tell and who would believe me? We sat together at breakfast when he told me, Gorendu, take some puris and some sabji. And I said, no, I'll be fine with muri. That Swami, who taught me the Bhagavad Gita, sent me out with his back to Godheads on the streets of Calcutta, you know, disguised as a mild-mannered householder, you know, Abhay Babu, that he has taken, you know, fulfilled Saraswati Thakur's order, the vision of Bhaktivedanta Thakur and Mahaprabhu's prediction, and spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Is there anyone I could tell this to? Would they believe me that from these former times that he's become the 10 million times Jagat Guru. That's the verse that Srila Gurudev picked. So we're talking about the qualified disciple, or who can express the appropriate glorification. So of course that pleased Srila Prabhupada, all those with the ears to hear. Srila Guru Maharaj, Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj leaping off the ground, taking Krishna Nam. So this mutual appreciation from Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Govinda Maharaj, and the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat, and all the followers of Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It's sometimes Guru Maharaj say, we are from the same zone. And that's what Maharaj is. He may say broken record, but it's a broken record of the most beautiful song that's telling you this. There's a plane in the upper world where they are. That is where they reside. And it's predominated by Bhaktivedanta Thakur and Babaji Gorkashordas Babaji Maharaj is there, Srila Saraswati Thakur, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, that divine domain. And our aspiration is not to enter there and cause disturbance, but rather if we can serve them from here, right, follow their orders, preach Krishna consciousness as they've all instilled within us, then we have some hope of serving, if they so desire, in some other capacity. That is their sweet will. We're happy, more than happy, to get, and proud, as Guru, to get their divine connection, and for that still to be available to us through service. And so, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Avirbhav Mahamahosavatiti Ki Jai, Sri Nandotsav Ki Jai, Nitai Go Premanande.
Hari Hari Bo.
And I'll just sing this song because it's like favorite song of Prabhupada, Jaya Radha Madhava.
Jai.
Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Avirbhav Mahamahotavati ki jai. Sri Nandotsav ki jai. Shri Krishna Janmashtami ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Satara Siddha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Thakur Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Om Vishnupad Sri Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Jai Saparikar Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Gandharva Govinda Sundarju ki jai. Sri Krishna Balaram Mandir ki jai. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness ki jai. Jai Saparikar Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Sri Radha Madhava Sundarju ki jai. Sri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai. Sri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sad Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Go Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Dham ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness ki jai. Shri ISKCON Mayapur Chandradoya Mandir ki jai. Ganga Devi, Jumna Devi, Bhakti Devi, Tulsi Devi ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Brinda ki jai. Jai Sri Bhakti Ranjan Madhusudan Maharaj ki jai. Sri Bhaktivedanta Maharaj ki jai. Sriman Paramananda Prabhu ki jai. Bhakti Lalita Devi Dasi ki jai. Seva Brinda ki jai. Samaveda Bhakti Brinda ki jai. Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Avirbhav Mahamahotavati ki jai. Nitai Go Premanande.